Booker T. Washington was an American educator, author, orator, and one of the most dominant leaders in the African American community and of the contemporary black elite within his time period. He managed to build a university and believed that his vision for black people would eventually lead to equal political and civil rights. Some important information to know about the time period was that the Civil War was still active. Even though Washington will eventually grow up within the time period of the Reconstruction era, he was still born as an enslaved person living on a Virginian plantation until the age of 9. However, whenever the Reconstruction era does begin, Washington will have a first-hand experience of the disenfranchisement of black Americans, the rise of mass racial oppressionist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, and the horrors of the Jim Crow laws, which overall limited the rights of African Americans in society. Whenever Booker T. Washington was speaking on his opinions and beliefs, he intended to be heard by the ears of the white people who supported his ideas of black self-determination and by the newly freed men who wanted to find a way to advance in society. By appealing to both groups of people, Booker T. Washington hopes that with the cooperation, he is able to achieve his goal of racial accommodation in society. A notably famous speech given by Booker T. Washington was his Atlanta Compromise speech. In this speech, he expresses his opinions of believing that black and white Americans should act cordial with each other. Washington emphasizes his idea of economic self-determination over the desire for political and civil rights for black Americans. Washington explains that if black people would concentrate on education and invest in their own businesses, that they would eventually increase their social status. And he also believed that the African American community should work their way up into society. His ideas tended to be criticized by other major black leaders at the time period, such as W.E.B. Du Bois. However, due to his support from white people, his ideas were overall praised. Some of Booker T. Washington's major beliefs was that instead of seeking the help from white Americans, black people should concentrate on educating themselves. He emphasized the point of African Americans accepting the discrimination shown to them for the time being and focus on self-elevation through hard work and determination. Booker T. Washington overall believes that if enough work was done, then eventually the black American would be recognized by his white peers and benefited with more equal rights than before. He proved his own point himself by Washington worked very hard for his education and eventually gained the support of the white men and the government in Alabama. He gained funds from these people and was eventually able to build the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, where other notable people such as George Washington Carver and Emmett J. Scott would study. Washington's main goals was to spread ideas of racial accommodation throughout society. He preaches the philosophy of self-help and racial solidarity as a way to create change in society for black Americans. However, it is notable that Washington was discovered to have secretly financed court cases against segregation and even wrote letters against lynch mobs. It is speculated that these were kept a secret because if these cases and letters became public, Booker T. Washington would lose the support of his white supporters. However, this information does allow us to note that Washington was in favor of the civil rights for black Americans. Booker T. Washington was an important figure to know about, as he was a prominent speaker, reformer, and writer for African American voices. He brought new ideas and helped spread the word throughout America by his famous books and speeches. Booker T. Washington is also significant to note because of the fact that he was one of the last spokesmen for black voices that were formerly enslaved. He was able to use his first-hand experience in order to form his ideas and beliefs about society. Lastly, Washington founded many educational programs, most notably what is now known as the Tuskegee University, which is a historically black university located in Alabama.